Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text number 16. So here Krishna is starting to talk to Arjuna about what kinds of people actually come to God and why. So just as you're here today wanting to know more, Arjun was there at that time 5,000 years ago wanting to know more about the nature of God, the nature of this world, the nature of creation, the nature of existence. And so he'd been asking many questions from Krishna. And at this point, Krishna is telling him about who he is and what kinds of people inquire after the nature of existence for God. 4 kinds of pious men begin to render service to me or seek God, shall we say. 4 kinds of people are seekers. They are the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and the person who is searching for knowledge of the absolute. So you'll think about it, most people that come to any kind of religion come there because they want something. They're distressed, they want to find someone who will solve their problems, and they've heard there's this guy God up there who will, can do magical things. Now, if you could replace God with some healer, magician, guru, someone who could just fix everyone's problems, they'd probably go there, right? Because what they're really looking for is someone who will solve their problem. So the first kind of person Krishna is talking about is the distressed. Then comes the desirer of wealth. So a lot of people you'll see them in temples, churches, mosques, wherever you go, desiring wealth, praying, God, give me money, give me wealth so that I can, it could be as basic as I need to take care of my family. It could be that I want to be a multimillionaire, whatever it is. And whatever form you want to give that, even if you look at people who believe in things like the law of attraction, for them too, it's about approaching the universe, as they will say, for wealth. Ultimately, they're not asking the key questions about why am I here? What is life all about? What is, why is there suffering? They're not going that deep. They're just saying, hey, I've heard you can be a multimillionaire by doing X, Y, and Z and aligning your frequency or your vibration or whatever else. And that's why I've come to this law of attraction thing. A lot of people come to spirituality or religion for these reasons. Either they're troubled or they want something, they want wealth. Sometimes a person wants, I want to be able to attract that partner and maybe I can get some help here. God help me. There's someone they can pray to or call on. Then you have curious people. They want to know a little bit more about, what's this all about? They're inquisitive. So some people will come and they'll want to inquire about a particular way of life. Like sometimes you might find yourself going to a church or talking to a Christian person or a Hindu or a Muslim or whatever faith they might be of, and you might have some questions about that. So they're still on the edge, inquisitive. But then comes the person who is searching for knowledge of the absolute. Meaning, I want to find that knowledge which is above all others. That, like today we live in an information age where everybody wants knowledge, information. And we pride ourselves in the fact that we've got these tools like Google and search engines that can help us find anything we want to know. I mean, it's a fact. It's a pretty amazing achievement that we've been able to put all the human knowledge on the planet onto this internet, and now we're able to search it and find anything we want to know. But despite that, if you were to ask Google, who is God? I don't think Google would come up with a clear answer, probably give you some evasive answer. So Krishna is saying the 4th kind of person who approaches him is one who is searching for knowledge of the absolute. To know, he's not even using terms like God or whatever, he's saying the absolute. What is the highest form of knowledge? What is the greatest wisdom there is? And as he puts it at one point, he says, knowing this, there remains nothing further to be known. It was, in fact, in the last chapter, was it earlier on in this chapter itself? I think it was in this, right, where he says, out of, yeah, well, I won't try to search for a verse that I don't remember right off, but the idea that knowing this, there is nothing further to be known. That is knowledge of the absolute, right? It's the highest form of knowledge. But knowledge in itself isn't enough. One may know, but not act, right? So that in itself, that's not going to lead you very far. Knowledge is the beginning. Like if I know how to get from point A to point B, good, that's it, that's knowledge. But when I actually go from point A to point B, now I have an experience of what it's like. When I actually arrive at point B, not only do I know what the journey was like, but I can also tell you about what that place looks like. What is it like to be there in that destination? And so those are the important things that a person who is going to be inquiring after the absolute wants to find someone who can tell them, what does the journey look like? And then what is the destination? What can I expect out there? What can I hope to find? What is a realistic and achievable outcome? So Krishna goes on into the next verse saying, and of these, the one who is in full knowledge, who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best, for I am very dear to him and he is very dear to me. Means one who is acting upon what they have learned, one who is applying it. That person is the one for whom ascension is possible, growth is possible. And for that person, they will find themselves becoming closer and closer to the objective, which is God. What does it mean to be closer to God? It's a very interesting question. How do you know that you're closer to God? How do you know that you're not just on a wild goose chase, right? Because a lot of folks will ask, I mean, you believe this and I believe this, and my way is better than your way based on what? Based on, belonging to a particular group of people. No, that's not enough. There are symptoms for knowing that you are closer to God. And those symptoms begin with some very real, measurable, tangible, observable symptoms. It begins with yourself. You know whether your mind is peaceful and quiet or not. Just simple thing, because that quietude within yourself allows you to experience the subtle energies of which this universe is made. You can't experience them while you're in your head. Like if you go out for a walk in nature, you can't experience the energy of nature unless you're really quiet inside. If you're in your head, if you're thinking about your problems, if you're there with all your day-to-day stuff going on, your things to do, I got to do this, I got to do that, or if you're busy doing stuff, then you're not going to be present to what is around you in nature. And the result of that is going to be you're not going to get the full benefit of being there. You're going to be there, but disconnected from it. You'll get a little bit of that energy. But if you're truly present, you will soak it in. You will take it all in. The same would apply to if you're there in a temple or a church or a mosque or any place, wherever you go to pray. If you go there without a bag full of things I want you to do, God, here's my list, can you do this for me? Like God is sitting there supposed to fulfill all your wishes and supposed to grant you all your desires, like some genie in a bottle or a Santa Claus, right? That's kind of how most people view God, that this person is going to give me what I want. And sometimes they get what they want and sometimes they don't. And if you really were to go out and do the statistic, it might be 50-50. I don't personally believe God is there granting people their wishes. I don't think God's interested in playing the role of Santa Claus or of a genie. Um, I think the most important thing is he's waiting for the time where someone comes who's really interested in knowing, who are you? Who are you, God? And why are you somewhere else? And why are you not visible to me? And why am I here? And what is this world all about? And if you and I have a connection with each other, then why have you left me here in all this suffering and misery? What's going on? What's this all about? So Krishna says that one who inquires sincerely, and early in the Bhagavad Gita, he has told Arjuna that he says, I'm revealing this. This is actually in a different chapter. He says, I reveal this knowledge unto you because of your sincerity, because of your humility, because of your eagerness to learn. Because that's the only way someone can learn, is if they have humility. If they feel they already know, then there's nothing they will learn. But if they feel that they do not know, then they will easily be able to absorb. If they already have a whole bunch of ideas, then until they put aside those ideas, they're not going to be able to learn anything new. So it really is important to come there with an empty mind. Even if you go to a place of prayer or worship, to go there with an empty mind and say, God, all I want is you. All I want is you. Everything else in this world that I have or that I want or that I need or that I desire is fulfilled with you by having you. And that's a fact. If, for example, you were to go and meet with a king, right? And the king's got everything, right? And you say, well, king, I just want from you $200, right? I need to take care of my family and I need a little bit of money right now. So could you please give me that? The king might say, all right. Or he might say, no, it's not my job to do. You need to work and make the money yourself. But the opportunity is such a golden opportunity. You've gone to the king. You could have asked, hey, I'd like to get to know you. I've heard amazing things about you, but I want to know more about you. Why is this and why is that? And what is it that, how do you, you could ask things and you could form a connection with that king and you could actually become their friend. And if you could become their friend, well, now the sky's the limit. If they feel that, it'd be beneficial for you to be taken care of, they'll help you out. But that's not what you're even interested in. You're not even asking for that. It doesn't matter, right? One who truly wants to be your friend, like let's say if you're a wealthy person, someone wants to be your friend, but they've got an agenda behind that friendship. They're looking for, what can I get out of you? How can you help me with my issues? How can you help me sort my problems? But this person is just out to use you. And if you're a kind, generous person, you'll say, all right, let them use me, big deal. I hope that somewhere they'll get past that and want to get to know me for who I am. And a lot of people never get to that place. But if you are in that place, Krishna says, such a person who not only comes searching for the knowledge of the absolute, but then who starts to act upon it, who starts to implement what he or she is learning, such a person is very dear to me, and I am very dear to him. All those devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but someone who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in transcendental service is sure to attain the highest and most perfect goal. Many people that I come across are very confused about one particular issue, especially in the area of spirituality. They say that we're all one. And Krishna, in a sense, is saying that here. In a sense, he's saying that I consider such a person to be just like my own self. So the question is, are we one or are we different? If we are one, and there's a big argument for it, right? The fact is that there is truth to it. you and I and all of us are made of the same stuff, the same energy, right? If you took these bodies and you dissolved them down to their essence, you would find energy. That energy is not different in me or in you or in anyone else. We're actually made of the same stuff. If you take a look at the space around us, right? That space is not my space or your space. It is space. It is air. The air inside my mouth and in your mouth is the same. There's no difference in the air. The air is one. The energy that we are made of is the same, no doubt. And yet, and to use that to say that we are indeed the same, and I heard someone say this recently, said, you are the source of the creation. Everything comes from you. That's a big jump, right? Because I don't even know how to create a car or a house, certainly not a planet or a universe, right? Or human, or a body, like a human being or an animal. I have no idea. So whatever it is that created all of this, I can't say I'm that. And yet, in a way, I am that. I'm made of the same stuff that this universe is made of and that God is made of. And yet I'm different. So Chaitanya, 500 years ago, talked about we are simultaneously one with and different from God. And that, I think, makes more sense to me. If any of you have questions, I'd be happy to talk about that. But the fact is that although we are one, we have unique perspectives, unique capabilities, unique natures. No two of us is in fact the same. No two of us has the same experiences or realizations or thoughts or emotions. We perceive the world entirely uniquely. So in a way, you could say, if there are 7 billion people on this planet, then there are 7 billion perspectives with which God views him and herself. It's a very fascinating idea when you start to integrate, when you don't think in terms of either or. Either we are one or we are different. No, we are both one and different. Now wrap your head around that one and see what comes up for you. And let's see where we can take that discussion. But here Krishna is saying that one who begins to act on these things, not only situated in knowledge, but begins to actually act on it, I consider to be just like my own self. In other words, that person is now starting to vibrate in the same frequency as God. And therefore, such a person, often amongst teachers and gurus, they're called the representative. They're considered to be vibrating at that frequency, and therefore are given that kind of respect. It's unusual in this world where we don't think like that, but this is what Krishna is saying. He's that such a person is just like my own self. We are coming closer and closer to our godlike nature. We are becoming more and more godly, but that doesn't mean we are God. It's a very interesting distinction. We may, in fact, develop all the qualities of God, but quantitatively, we are still going to be different. A drop of water has all the qualities of the ocean, but not the power and magnificence of the ocean itself, nor the depth. The drop of water is still a drop. You can say, well, that drop of water merges into the ocean and now becomes the ocean. But even when it merges, the drop of water still consists of atomic particles. Those atoms still have not merged. They're still individuated particles. So the theory only goes so far. The reality might be something more interesting. I think it's far more interesting that we are both simultaneously one with and different from God, because that way we get to have a uniqueness with which to relate not only to each other, but also to relate to God. Like, what would God be doing with if everything was the same? It'd be pretty boring. But what if everything was different? What if every particle was different? If every being was different? If every one was unique? Now it becomes a fascinating universe. Chapter 7, text number 19. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So it takes many births and deaths to arrive to this point. Whoa. One moment. Sorry for that. After many births and deaths, one who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. The cause of all causes. What do you think that means? Anyone want to take a try at that one? What does it mean, the cause of all causes?
He's the Big Bang.
The Big Bang. He is the Big Bang, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he would be what was there before anything. He's the initiator.
Yeah, exactly. So if we go by the theory of the Big Bang, if there was a Big Bang, fair enough. I don't think the scientists have any evidence that there actually was. I think it's an interesting hypothesis. There could have been, but no one was around to witness it, so we don't know for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's a Big Bang either. I was just using an analogy that, you know.
But I like the dramatic analogy.
Yeah, he's the Big Bang. Yes.
Yeah, the initiator of the Big Bang.
Yeah.
But let's assume the theory to be correct. He would still be the one behind the Big Bang. Because ultimately, for everything in a Big Bang to actually, after the bang, instead of just disintegrating, which is usually what happens, suddenly you have everything breaking off into perfectly rounded particles called planets that then have perfectly sorted out ecosystems and oceans and mountains, and gradually the evolution, the environments needed for life. And I imagine that out of the literally trillions of planets that are there in the universe, there have to be thousands of them that have life. So with that, if you can start with that, then the conditions for life to exist, the possibility that life could actually evolve in the way it did. I'm not denying evolution. Evolution is there. But evolution doesn't mean that one species turns into another. That even Darwin could not prove. And nobody after Darwin could ever prove that. See? The species are actually unique. And they'll evolve to a point, but never to the point where they jump from one species to another. Like dogs can mate amongst dogs, but you'll never see a dog and a cat mate and come out with a half cat, half dog. That doesn't happen, right? And even if they did mate, they would not be able to conceive anything. It wouldn't happen. So neither is there.
Isn't that that's interesting, right? Because isn't it like you can mate a horse with a donkey?
Yeah, they're of a similar kind.
And get a mule, or either it's the other way around, a horse with a mule and you get a donkey, but whichever one is created, it can't create.
It can't do the same.
I don't think it can.
Oh.
But I need to check on that.
Right. But
so
again,
that's kind of interesting.
Family. They're in the same family. Like
right.
if two horses mated, you wouldn't get a bird.
But even a horse and a donkey, you can't get an animal that could procreate.
Okay.
Right.
Well, amongst dogs, you do see.
So it sticks with your theory.
Right. Yeah. My point is that Darwin called it the missing link, and the missing link was never found. There was never a point where you could actually see that the ape was turning into the human. The ape evolved to a point, and the human evolved in their own way. And in fact, even amongst humans, there are so many different species of humans. They can mate with each other. But the human and the monkey Try getting them to mate. Nothing will come out of it. It just doesn't work that way. So, yeah, the initiator, the person behind, the cause of all causes, sarva karana karanam. He's the cause of all causes. That is the primeval, the original cause of the universe, of all that exists. And in many ways, we have those qualities in us. We are also creators. We are also manifestors. We are also people who, are creating our lives and our world. What we create, however, is up to us, whether we create a mess or we create something beautiful. That is entirely in our hands. But we get that tendency, that nature, that quality from God. Because in fact, that's where we come from. And that's why we have the desires that we have. We don't realize that the reason that we seek love is because God is love. The reason we seek happiness is because God is happiness. The reason we seek wealth and abundance is because God is abundant. See? In every way, if you begin to understand what God is, then you also begin to understand that everything you're seeking, but you're seeking it externally, you're seeking it in the world, everything you've been seeking, behind that was God. So ultimately, what you were seeking was God. So he says, after many births and deaths, one comes to this point where one understands, like Mariah said, that he's the Big Bang. He's the big dude. Yeah. And it takes many births and deaths to come to the point where you get that. Right? Such a great soul is very rare. So again, take that with a touch of humility, please. The fact that you're here, inquiring about these things, learning these things, getting these things, understanding these things, but also know that it has taken you a long time to get to this place. It's not everyone who is inquiring, and it's not everyone who is really getting the answers that they need to move forward. Those whose intelligence have been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their natures. Now, in India and countries like that, you'll see that there are, well, technically millions of demigods, but there are a few who are very popular, probably a handful, 4 or 5, who are extremely popular. But they're popular only for one reason, is that they are believed to give you the things you want. People are selfish and motivated. They want what they want. So they will look for, oh, Krishna doesn't give me what I want, but let me go to Durga or Ganesh or someone else, and through them I'll get what I want. Let me worship that. Let me worship that which will give me my desires. And that's exactly how Krishna has set it up. He set it up that there are all these other demigods. Demigods are not God. They are empowered beings like you and I, but who have been empowered with a certain role of managing the universe, of taking care of people, maybe giving them their desires once in a while, so they don't get too hopeless. But the idea being that he's saying those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods. Now, sometimes those demigods are actually, even if we look at them on this human planet, people will go and start following a particular teacher who's, let's say, teaching a particular way of how to make money or how to become famous or how to become an influencer or this or that, whatever those kind of people are teaching. And what you'll find is this, that a lot of people, because their intelligence has been stolen by material desires, they will go and do whatever this person is asking them to do. And then they will get the results. And now more people will start coming and following this person. Krishna is talking about their intelligence has been stolen by material desires. He's not very He's now very comforting to such people, because he's saying that they're basically getting misled. If you would begin to see that your material desires are actually not material at all your material desires are only pointing the way to God. Because if you look at all of matter, even within everything you desire, there is God. That's what the energy of the universe is made of. So when you begin to see that this home you have belongs to God, this car you have, this body you have, right? Every breath you take comes from God. Every desire you have then is a desire from God and for God. It doesn't mean that you need to give up the world. It simply means you need to see God in the world and in everything that you do. And so now you are never separated from God. You are in God, wanting God and enjoying God in everything you do. Krishna says further in text 21, he says, I am in everyone's heart as the Paramatma, the Super Soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so he can devote himself to that particular deity. Endowed with such faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. People of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotee ultimately reaches my supreme planet. Unintelligent people who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I know all living entities, but me, no one knows. So I think you can start to see from here, he's looking at us chasing after the desires that we have as really a waste of time. I'm not saying that you don't need stuff. Of course you need stuff. Of course you need to be able to live and to be comfortable in this world and so on and so forth, but not to make that the goal of your life. So what would be the goal of your life then? If you're not going to chase material desires, if you're going to find God in everything you do, what would be the goal of your life? What would you do? Anyone? And by the way, Craig and Rima, if you guys are anywhere that you can have us see you, we'd love to see you. All right, what do you think?
I don't know.
What do you do with your life if you realize that chasing material desires wasn't all that it was made out to be?
Well, I think I already know that, and I still do it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a little bit more complicated than, I don't know. I mean, I think we're all battling against that.
Yes.
You
And
know?
it's a fine line. I need things in this world too. I need to have things, and I like to have things that are of good quality. If I'm going to have something, I'd rather have something that is of good quality than something that is junk. Right? But there's a fine line.
Right.
The desires can be endless. You can always want more and more and more and more. It never ends. So the idea is really to simplify your life and have a few things, have good things, but keep it simple. Otherwise, you'll be there chasing stuff for the rest of your life, and if you make that the goal of your life, then it's a futile life, right? But if you make the goal of your life something more, What would that something more be?
I mean, I think that he talks about it here, that it would be devotion to God.
Right. To get to know him and devote your life to him.
And then I think,
mm-hmm.
I mean, I think if you were devoted to God, that so then you have the words surrender and service.
Right. Then comes surrender and service. Exactly.
Yeah.
Surrender means being able to recognize what is the will of God in any given moment. Now, how do you recognize God? How do you surrender? The way you surrender is you release your will, you release your desire, you release your sense of what do I want and what do I think and what, you release the I. And you ask, what is it you want? How can I serve you in this moment? What is it? What is thy will? Not my will. And then the next part is serve. You said it rightly, you put it beautifully, in fact. Surrender and then serve. To surrender means to come into alignment with. If you understand this, it's a very profound understanding. To come into alignment with God. This is what he was saying earlier, that such a person is like me. This person has become just like my own self, right? Which means that person who has surrendered has come into alignment with God, is now vibrating at that frequency. They've put aside everything that is I, me, and mine, and come into alignment with God. So it doesn't mean that if you live, let's say you live on a farm, or I live in a house. To me, that house, that farm, all of that belongs to God. It's a place to bring people into and share the bounty with them of what God has given. Whether that is the food you have or the resources you have, to share that, not to people who are going to misuse that either. At the same time, you're the caretaker of that. But to come into that place where you're in that place of surrender to God and now of service to others, starting with the people around you and then expanding out to the world at large to whatever degree you can. So it's that becomes our life work then, to be able to serve. This part is very interesting, where he says, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. So does that mean that everything is written and predestined?
Yeah.
I don't believe so. I don't believe that he ever says that everything is destined or preordained or something like that. Because then the principle of free will would be gone. And if the principle of free will collapsed, then the principle of karma would collapse. There would be no consequence. If everything is being done by God, if everything is preordained and was written by him and we are just puppets, doing what we're supposed to be doing, then the karma is all of God.
What if this is just a different concept of time?
Okay.
Right? Because he could know everything that's happened in the past, all that's happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come, if the concept of time is taken out of it, because then everything's happening at the same time. And so we do have free will. Yes. He's just all encompassed in the experience that's his.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, because God is living in infinite time. There's no time per se. There is no such concept of time. What there are infinite possibilities. And of those possibilities, we're going to take some of them and keep going on that. So in a sense, you could think that things are destined. They're not. It's just that when you get on the road from San Diego to LA, you're on that highway. That's where that highway is headed. It's just where it's going to go. Unless you take a detour out of it, and then and you keep going on the detour and you land up somewhere else. But as long as you stay on the highway that's going from San Diego to LA, you'll land up in LA. It's not going to go much further. So similarly, everyone, if you think of your path is really where you're going to head out in your life is a consequence of what you're doing right now. And what you're doing right now is going to take you to wherever you're going to get to in the future. There's no need for anyone to predict that. I find that when people go to psychics and others, they just, well, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't go around trying to get first and foremost, if this life is like a movie, who wants to know the end of the movie before it happens? Or who wants to know, who wants to, what's that term they say when you tell what's going on in the movie? Is an expression. You don't want to, tell someone about what's going to happen in the movie. You don't know?
Spoiler?
A spoiler, exactly. Yes. So you don't want to spoil the movie for the other person, be a spoiler. So the same way, even if you did know, it's better not to know. It's better to let the mystery unravel on its own pace, in its own way, right? But I don't believe anyone can really predict what's going to happen because, yeah, I mean, you can tell the general trajectory a person is on, but any moment, any time, you can make a change of thought, a change of circumstance, and a change of a trajectory where someone comes on your path and suddenly you go off from what you would normally doing. That can happen to anyone, anytime, anywhere. So I don't think God is controlling anything. I don't think God is. So that's where these arguments just fall completely flat. When people say, well, if there was a God, why would there be bad things happening in the world? You're assuming, such people are assuming that God is controlling everything, that God is some kind of puppeteer that is doing everything. And why would that controller want to do everything that, make bad things happen? So there must, either that person doesn't exist or that person must be a really bad person. But the reality is that we've been given free will to do whatever it is we want to do, to create whatever we want to create. And that's why it's really, really important that when you see people doing things, you don't get all caught up in that. You'll see people doing good things. You'll see people doing some pretty messed up things, right? And that's all part of free will. Everyone's been given free will just as you have and I have, so have they. And if they're doing things that you don't agree with or you don't like, that's their free will. You can try talking to them if they listen, but there's no point talking to people who are not interested in listening. It's just a waste of time. So keep that in mind. Free will. Free will is a very important piece. And for every action people perform, there's going to be reactions. So that's another piece to know as well. If we're messing up this planet today, there's going to be reactions. If you have the power to stop people from messing up the planet, by all means do it. But otherwise, if you don't, there's no point in going around feeling all angry and miserable and mad at people and governments and what have you. Because ultimately, I think I love the way Christ said it. He says, they know not what they do. That in their delusion, in their inability to understand the consequences of their action, in their short-sightedness, they're creating a mess of this beautiful place. And there are people who are doing it with their lives. There are people who are doing it with the health system. There's people who are doing it with nature. It's happening all around us. And it's very easy to get agitated about it. And I would just say to you, please accept them for where they're at, because there is nothing we can do to change their minds. They're stuck on their trajectory and on their path. Yeah, go ahead.
I just had this really kind of amazing thought that, like, if you think about, I'm not a Christian, and so I don't really, I think it's kind of I don't know, a great analogy or mythology. But if you think about Christ dying like that and then saying they know not what they do, you can kind of extrapolate that maybe that's symbolism for, if you're saying that everything is God, if it's a drop of God,
Right.
then we're constantly crucifying God in everything that we do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a powerful symbol of just really, everything we do, if we don't, if we don't know what we're doing, and if we're not being at our highest, or if we're hurting or causing harm or destroying the planet or acting in anger or whatever, aren't we kind of crucifying God?
I think you're right. I think you're right. There is, I mean, if you were sitting in the position of God and looking at human beings and what they're doing to this planet, to each other, to themselves, it would be very distressing. It would be very um, hurtful to see that I've given you this beautiful place. I've given you these beautiful bodies. And what are you ingesting in there into your bodies? And what are you doing to the planet? And what are you doing to each other? You know, I gave you all these wonderful souls that you could hang around with, and you're here jealous of them, angry with them, pissed off, calling them, all kinds of names, instead of learning to get along with each other, instead of learning to love each other. And it's sad. If you were to look at it from God's perspective, it is truly a remarkable. And yet, out of all of that muck, are arising some incredible souls. So perhaps that is the process. Perhaps that is the process, that through the pain and through the suffering and through all the stuff that happens lifetime over lifetime, we gradually come to this place of awakening where we start to seek answers, where we start to look beyond the surface, and we start saying, hey, how can I get to know what's happening out here? Who's behind this whole thing? And then we start to seek other like-minded people, and we start to find that these are the people who understand me. They're the ones who get me. And I want to be around such like-minded people. So it becomes very fulfilling, actually, when you come to this point. It becomes very satisfying. Like it's almost like your soul is at ease. I have come to something that really nurtures and satisfies my soul. For the rest, I see people doing exactly what you're saying, being very discontent, and in their discontent creating so much of havoc with each other. Chapter 7, text number 27. O scion of Bharat, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arising from desire and hate. This verse is very, very important. All living entities are born into delusion. You know that line of Christ we were just saying? They know not what they do. Well, here it is. They're born into delusion, overcome by the duality, bewildered by dualities arising from desire and hate. So in the case of Christ being on the cross, it was hate, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then for everything that we're doing in this world, it's all about desire. We want more of this and more of that. Somehow we want to be able to have and manifest and create and what have you. But desire and hate. So these are the two things we're playing with all the time. I like this, I don't like this. This is what duality is all about. I agree with you, I disagree with you. This is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. Duality. If you look at it, everything in your mind is operating from duality. Everything in your mind is being sorted out into duality. Your mind is constantly looking at, and whatever it looks at, it processes that stuff, and then it says, I like that. I like you. I don't like you. Right? I like this food and I don't like that food. I agree with this theory and I don't agree with that theory. Duality. Even when people say that there are good and evil, good and bad, duality, they're still looking at the world through those eyes, those dualistic eyes. Hey, interesting. We have two eyes, two ears. Maybe that's how duality is created. Duality is the mind sorting everything into these us versus them, in versus out. You're in the in club and the out. So constantly dividing, breaking things into, instead of uniting. If you look at what happens in spirituality, the coming together, uniting of people. Why am I in disagreement with most religions? Because they divide people. They don't unite people. They divide people between one religion and another, saying mine is better than yours. How is that different than people saying my car is better than yours, or my house is better than yours, or my country is better than yours? No, that's all part of the delusion. The duality delusion. Sounds like a good one, right? The duality delusion. So whenever you come across something, always look at its opposite. And when you look at its opposite simultaneously, you'll notice that arguments collapse. You'll notice that chaos collapses. All the confusion in the mind collapses. If you can look at both sides of a situation, right? If you're having an argument with someone and you just step into their shoes and you look at what they're thinking and you are willing to acknowledge what they're thinking, say, hey, I can see that this is how you see things. They feel understood. And if they can now step into what you're thinking, the conflict is over. There's nothing to argue about. You understand each other. You can be as different as you need. You don't even have to agree with each other. But the fact that you have, so if you consider one person's point of view as plus A and the other person's point of view as minus A or negative A, then when you bring A and negative A together, what actually happens is they fuse and nothing remains. A oneness is created. The separation dissolves. The argument dissolves. The sense of us versus them or me versus you dissolves. And we're now on the same page, even though we may be different and even though we may not agree. Have you experienced that ever?
Definitely.
Yeah. Whenever you try it, I mean, we call it speaking, just connecting from the heart. But what does connecting from the heart mean? Get out of your head. What does it mean, get out of your head and come into your heart? It means stop looking at things from a dualistic vision. Because the moment you see it from a dualistic vision, I'm right, you're wrong, right? Then there's going to be a conflict. If I'm right, you're wrong, or if you say I'm wrong and you're right, then I'm going to feel, I'm being always made wrong. And I'm going to feel victimized. I'm going to feel, the world is not fair. And it goes spiraling down. Right? So whether you are right all the time, then you get into an arrogance. And then if you feel you're wrong all the time, you go into victimization. One way or the other, you get messed up. But if you are neither right nor wrong, that's interesting. Now duality dissolves. If you are neither good nor bad, duality dissolves. If you are neither better than anyone nor worse than anyone, you're just you. And as for different opinions about different things, they're just opinions. Does anyone know the truth? No, not really. Right? Does anyone have the better way? No, not really. But you know what? You can always try out things. Someone says this food is better than that food. This path is better than that path. Well, try it out. See how it works for you. I know that when I was introduced to the idea of being vegetarian and I took it up, I was 20 years old. I resisted, argued. Eventually I said, all right, let me try it out. My health drastically improved. Drastically. I used to be very sickly before that. You get the smallest thing, cold, coughs, fever, flu, all that. Ever since they removed my tonsils, I was constantly getting ill. Became vegetarian, suddenly my health was like gold. It helped, and it helped have a quiet mind. So I saw the outcome of something. I think it's more important than not trying to argue about things is test things out, see what works, see what actually gives you the desired outcome. That's far more important than right or wrong, believe or not believe. good or bad. When it comes to the other things, like, let's say qualities that you might have that are not so good, it's all right. Accept them. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be good. Embrace that which is bad and that which is good within you. Then you are neither good nor bad. Some people say, oh, I feel worthless. Well, what if you embraced worthlessness? What if you loved worthlessness? What if you found beauty in worthlessness? What if you found that it was not something that could actually harm you in any way? That within within the emptiness, within the worthlessness, within the insignificance, was a great virtue that you were learning. And that virtue was humility. And if you could learn that humility, it would take you to the highest levels of spiritual growth. There is beauty in just about everything, and wisdom just about everything. It's a question for us to find it. So even things that appear to be bad are often good, and things that appear to be good can often be bad. All of technology that has today come to us in such a seductive way, in which we love our technology. I love it too. But it's also done a lot of damage to the planet. It's done a lot of damage to the environment and to people's health and all of that. Both things, it's been a double-edged sword, duality. So keep in mind, wherever you see duality, there are the functionings of the human mind. And where you see spirituality in its fullest bloom for yourself or in another, you will see non-duality. You will see that they have moved beyond the duality of the world, beyond right and wrong. Rumi says this. He says, there is beyond right and wrong, there is a field. Meet me there. What do you think he's saying? He's saying there's another world beyond right and wrong, beyond the duality of your mind. Come to that world and meet me there. Let's go play. Let's go enjoy the field. There is a field. And by field, he doesn't necessarily mean just a field on this earth, but an entire field of consciousness, another entire realm. And so as more and more of us come to that realm, come to that place that is beyond duality, we get to play. The world will suddenly no longer a place of suffering, but is a place where you get to play. That's how I see it. I think we can all begin to shift into that place simply by getting beyond duality, which means do not buy into your mind when it tries to go into these positive and negative areas. Consider them as possibilities. Yes, there might be something harmful there. If it is harmful, sure, avoid it, but not otherwise. If there's something that is going to be destructive, sure, avoid it, just as a matter of precaution. But overall, we've got so many things of opinions and arguments and debates and conflicts that we get into. Better to avoid them and live in that place of non-duality and harmony and peace, where we can accept each other and love each other as we are. All right, with that, I better end here. We've got a new group that's come up. I've now started it. It's on Clubhouse. If you would like the link, I can put it in here. Or if not, I've sent out the emails already.
I didn't get that email.
You didn't get it?
All
right. So in case you wish to join, I'm just going to put it in the chat area. But we're on an app called Clubhouse. Clubhouse is only available on the phone. It is not available through the computer, and it's an audio only. So I'm trying out a new place where we're going to have this will continue exactly where it is, only the loving soulfully part of it, where we talk about relationships. That's shifting onto Clubhouse. It's an experiment I'm doing in which we'll get to check it out. So you'll need the Clubhouse app, and you may have to sign up there. But earlier it was restricted. Now it's no longer restricted. It's open to everyone. So if you'd like to join me there, we're starting at 8:15 in a few minutes.
What?
So trying out new things, experimenting with new things. Let's see what happens. All right, guys.
Thank you, Rohit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rima. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Mariah.
All
Thank you,
right.
Rohit.
Good night, you guys.
Take
Good
care.
night.
At all.